Cory, it's so nice to meet you. Thank you for coming out.
Well, thanks for having me.
Of course. There's a lot going on in Winnipeg with film, but I want to start at the beginning of your career. When did you decide that acting was the thing for you?
In high school, I kind of just happened to be cast in a play, and I was kind of that 50 student. Like I actually graduated high school with a very low GPA, and I just ended up in a play quite by mistake, and it was the first thing that I was kind of good at. It was the first time any sort of teachers told me, "Hey, you were good at that thing that you did," and so that's when it started for me. Was in high school when I in grade 12.
And do you remember the play?
Yeah, it was The Crucible by Arthur Miller, which is a you might have studied that in school. It's about the Salem witch hunt, which was based on the Neo McCarthyism of the '60s, and it's about the Salem witch hunt, witch trials, and so I got the lead role in that because the person that was playing it dropped out, and I was at a party, and I said to the director, I had some liquid courage, and I said, "Hey, do you need somebody to play that?" And she said, "Actually, yeah. Can you come in and read?" And I did. And she's like, "Hey, you're pretty good at this." And I was like, "Great." And so that's how that happened. And I guess that's when you find your passion for something. Everything else sort of just seemed to make sense, and I got some drive, and it was just sort of no turning back from there. There's a saying that when theater, or I guess probably performing, taps you on the shoulder and says, "Come on, you're coming this way." There's not much. You can ignore it and be miserable, or you can just go, "Okay, let's go." And so that's where it started.
And then theater is pretty big for you. You mentioned already that you do some writing for theater. Why did you decide to get into that aspect as well as the acting?
Into writing, I think when I was younger, I used to write a lot of short stories, and so find myself as identifying mostly with the term sort of entertainer, and so I'm interested in performing on all aspects. I've been a stage manager, I've been a director, I've built sets, I've acted, of course, and so I just find the whole process fascinating, and I think everything works off of each other. If I can understand being a writer, it's going to make me a better actor. If I can understand being an actor, it's going to make me a better writer, and then a director being a better director. And so it's sort of an all-encompassing thing, because I suppose I could say I'm a performing artist. So I find working on all those different elements sort of creates a nice cohesion for me.
So let's take The Grinch, for example.
Okay.
When you're writing something like that, how do you put your spin on it? When it's a story that's been told so many times before, how do you make it your own?
Luckily, I had been working at a dinner theater in town, Celebrations, and there's a lot of improvisation in that. And so I had an idea about making the story from the dog's point of view. And so that's kind of where I went from. But also because The Grinch is so iconic, I didn't want to change it that much. I think people might have got a little mad at me. And it was actually one of my first scripts that I ever wrote. And so it was a lesson in adaptation and trying to make things work. And so I think it's just thinking it from what I did there was thinking it from a different perspective, trying to make a different twist on it, but also kind of trying to keep it the same. And so that's how I figured my way around that one. But that was, like I said, that was my first play, and so that I ever wrote that was going to be done on a stage, and so it was also a learning process for me, and I was quite thankful for that theater company, which is now no longer in business, but it was a great chance for me to cut my teeth in that regard. Yeah.
And with Manitoba, once you work with people in the theater industry, it obviously opens up opportunities in other parts of entertainment. I can only assume that you've met people in film through that as well.
Yes, it's all one big family. If there's films happening in town, you're going to see people who do theater as well. I don't think in Manitoba, in Winnipeg, you can. Well, you can. I shouldn't say you can't, but for me, and I think a lot of the other people that live in Winnipeg and are working do it all, because it's. I don't think there's enough work to sort of say, I'm going to go over here and just focus on that. I think you can, but you're going to probably have to find something else. I know a lot of people who are film actors exclusively, but they are also teachers or doing something else that allows them to go off and do that. So you do end up meeting a lot of people and knowing a lot of the same people. And but that all being said, you meet a lot of new people too, because people are coming in from out of town to do these movies. And right now, it's really happening. Like, we have an Amazon Prime series coming into town, and that's very exciting. And that's happening and being filmed here. But we've had a lot of blockbusters like Breakthrough and Nomis. Which starred Henry Cavill and Sir Ben Kingsley and Nathan Fillion, Stanley Tucci, Alexander Daddario. So it's a lot of great names are coming here, and it's very exciting.
And we'll come back to the two movies that you just mentioned. Sure. But we actually received some good news about the Manitoba tax credit. It's become permanent, which is amazing. Yeah. Winnipeg's already, a fairly cheap place in Canada to do things. But now with that tax credit, we've got tons of other cities beat. So we can only expect to see more productions coming here, right? Yeah,
that's, I think, the purpose of making it permanent. So in the hope that we can keep this this flow going, because it does it brings in a lot of money for the province and for us, and it keeps us in business, keeps us actors and the film crews and everybody here with food on the table. Yeah.
And one of those things that put food on your table was Breakthrough. Yeah. You became a part of that. How did that all come to fruition for you?
Well, I auditioned, and it was actually kind of funny. I was in tech, which is in theater the week before a show goes up, and we do like 12-hour days because they're setting lights and they're setting sound. And the show was called Once, so we were also acting in the show, but we were also being the band. So there was a lot of work to be done there. But so I had the audition, and it was during this day, and I said to the stage manager, I have an audition. Do you think I can make it? And stage manager went, we'll try. And well, because it's so busy during Tech Week, and you're needed as an actor. You're needed there, and you're very vital. So it worked out. The good news is that it worked out, and it was just actually like a couple blocks away, so I was able to walk there. And the thing is, like, for me as a Winnipegger, you get a lot of these sort of auditions for these. They're called day players. So you do like 1 or 2 or 3, up to 5 lines, and you do them real quick, and you go in, you're out. You're in and you're out. So you can't really get into your head about them because it's only been like 3 or 4 lines, and so you're just sort of giving your best impression of what's going on. And then I got the call for it. I was like, oh, great. And it was actually a year ago around this time. Actually, it was my birthday's on Friday coming up here, March 15th. It was a year ago. It was on my 40th birthday. I was on the set for that. And what you see in the trailer, me yelling to those kids, get off the ice. I did that on my 40th birthday. Cool. But what actually was even about working the 12-hour days and then having to go in and say the line, hey kids, get off the ice. There was no acting there. I was actually quite grumpy from working the whole day and then running off in my break to do an audition. So I have 2 kids of my own, so it was just like, here's the lines, and it was easy to conjure up, and I guess that worked. Yeah.
So in a normal situation where maybe you're not in that mindset, you're not that grumpy guy, you've had your sleep, not such a long day, when they give you 4 or 5 lines, how do you get into character? Does that give you enough material to work with?
Well, luckily, there's a website with all of the sides. They're called sides, like the scenes that you have. And so you should try to read, they don't give you the whole script because, of course, the script's still in development. So you try to read as many other sides as you can. But if you can't get those, you just have to, what's called bottom line it. You just have to do a little bit of the work and try and figure out what the character wants and what they're saying and what's going on in the scene and how do they fit into the story. But after that, you just sort of, sometimes you just got to say the lines, like, and sort of put yourself into the imagined circumstances and just go for it. Yeah, so that's kind of how you would prepare for that. You also have to memorize the lines, and it was in that instance that I had 4 or 5 lines, but there's other ones where you have 2 or 3 pages, and so you memorize the lines because when you're on film like we are now, you can't be looking down. It sort of breaks the energy between yourself and the other actor, and the goal is to seem quite conversational. In theater, you have to project to the back of the theater. The person in row 50 deserves as much of a performance as the person in row 2. But in film, you got to pull it way back, so it's just the audience is right here in front of you. So you have to keep that in mind. So knowing the lines helps, so you can just keep that regular rhythm of speaking. So that's just a small tip of the iceberg of what you do to prepare for auditions.
Is it easy to turn that theater switch on and off, to know that you don't want to be projecting to the camera?
No, no, it's not. I'm still working on it. Like, that's because I've done like 20 times more theater than I have film, and so that's my constant challenge, is trying to figure out how to. And so what I do is I tape myself. If I am going for, well, here we go. I will put on my phone and deliver the lines, hopefully to the reader, or sometimes I'll just record myself saying the other lines and trying to go back. It's very difficult to pull back as much as you can, because you actually feel like you're doing nothing. You feel like you're just, you're not. But that is what film is. It's just sort of just making it there and being present and responding quite naturally, like you would in a conversation. We don't in real life think about having to project so the person 100 feet away from you can hear you. So that's the challenge for me, is playing that shift back and forth. And so then sometimes I'll get very cinematic when I go into the theater, and I know that it was when the director's like, okay, so you're going to probably have to project a little more. And I was like, oh, right. I guess I'm in film mode. Sorry. So it is very tricky to move back and forth for me.
This movie Breakthrough with Chrissy Metz, obviously tons of people are going to go to the theater to see that. Does it ever freak you out that all those people are going to be sitting there and judging you?
No, not for that movie. No. Well, man, I've never thought about it. Thanks a lot.
Oops.
No, I'm not, because there's nothing I can do now. Like, that's coming out in a month. What am I going to do? Phone up them and say, like, can we redo that? Can we go back out to Portage of the Prairie and redo that line? So there's nothing I can do. And I did, and I think with every performance, there is it took a long time for me to realize this. You just have to say, we're all very time bound in life, and I think we're all doing our best up until that point. So I did my best up until that point, and there's nothing I can do about it, and so I'm not going to stress out about it. Actually, I feel no pressure about, no sort of stress or anxiety about that film at all. Yeah, it's great.
Are you allowed to give my viewers the plot line?
Of Breakthrough? Yeah, it's about a story. It's about I'm trying to wonder what. If you've seen the trailer, what happens is it's a small community, and there's a young man, and he falls to the ice, and a rescue team comes in, and they save him. And the story then becomes about a community that rallies around this boy in this sort of life-threatening situation. And so it's a story about love, and it's a story about faith, and it's a story about community. And that, I think, in a nutshell, is what that movie is. And I think it's, in the end, going to be very heartwarming and uplifting.
I think it's perfect that it was filmed in Manitoba, because the way you just described it pretty much describes Manitoba.
Yeah. Yeah, I would think so. There is a camaraderie, I guess, in Winnipeg that I don't know what it is. I guess it's because we have to deal with these harsh temperatures, uh, and very extremes. Even in summer times, it gets really hot, and so I think there's sort of a kinship that we feel almost instantly. Like I've been to other places and I've met people from Winnipeg, and not only from Winnipeg, from where I grew up in Winnipeg, from and went to the same high school, and so. So we sort of talk the same language, but it's also I think what happens when you're dealing with all these extremes is that possibly this is a guess, you become more accepting.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
I like the way you put that. It's true. Now we have to talk about Ben Kingsley.
Yeah.
Fantastic actor. I guess it's Sir Ben Kingsley, isn't it?
It is Sir Ben Kingsley.
I had the opportunity to be an extra on a film that he was on in Vancouver. And just the way he came out to the extras after doing his scene and he bowed and thanked everybody for being there, you don't see that a lot. Did you get to experience him on set? And did you see that side of him?
Did I get to experience? I did a scene with him, and it was a huge scene, and it's a very intense scene that required a lot of vulnerability from on my behalf, because the story it's a thriller, so I can't say too much about it. But Sir Ben, he plays a vigilante who tracks down unsavory characters and deals with justice in his own way, and so I played one of these unsavory characters, and he was so gracious on the set, and I think I learned a lot about how to behave as an actor, but also a picture of success. He was very gracious, and you could tell that he was. Yes, he was Sir Ben, but he was also just the other actor in the scene. Mm-hmm. And he has to know, from my experience, what is going through my mind when you're meeting Sir Ben. He has to know. Yeah. And so he was, I remember walking into the scene, he's like, "Oh, hello there. Would you like to run the lines?" And I was like, yes, yes. And it's not until you're standing in front of somebody like that, you're like, "Oh boy, I'm standing in front of Sir Ben Kingsley. Oh boy." But then he says, "Would you like to run the lines?" Which is just a regular thing actors say to each other. Mm-hmm. It was automatically just like, yeah, let's run the lines. And so we were able to just work, which was most important for me, and I know it was most important for him. But just to see how he worked, how he was very detailed, and he was talking with the director, and he was getting concise with his work, and he's just a pro. It's just a pro. And for me, it was a workshop, a master class in acting, which in reflection, but in the moment, I was just sort of like, let's do this scene, and whatever I can do to make this work. And we were both in it together like that. And then we had a conversation about theater, and there's a funny story that I can't. Oh, I wish this movie was out because I can't give it away right now. But it was a funny story. We had a really fun moment together on the set, and then after that, I did the fanboy thing, and I got a picture with him, and he was very gracious about doing that. But I kind of regretted it because we had such a great professional scene together, and then to sort of go and be so very, "Can we get a picture?" kind of guy. I don't know. I kind of regret doing that because I feel like it's a job. It's our job, and but it's so different in that regard, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I think in your head you're thinking, "Oh my goodness, that was so immature." Like I've done the same thing with people, and you're like, "Oh, they're probably judging me," but at the same time, I bet you they've done it with someone else when they first started out. And I think maybe they look at it as, oh, they're building memories, and this is just for them to remember back when they did this with me. Not necessarily that you were, starstruck and just needing that picture to show all your friends.
That's what it was. It was so that my family would believe me. That's what it was.
Well, you have to wait so many months, sometimes even years, for the movie to come out too, right? So you gotta be able to show something for it.
That's right. I gotta prove that. Look, Dad. Look, I'm doing something with my life. I have to prove that. Yeah. So, yeah, you're probably right. And you know what? They're probably very used to it. So it's just that's just my own thing. But to pull it back, actually, to break through, there's a scene in a church, and there was 1,000 extras there, and that everybody was there. Topher Grace, Josh Lucas, Cressy Metz. So we're sitting there doing this scene, and Topher Grace says, "Doctor, could you tell us about this experience?" And then up stands Dennis Haysbert, who I didn't know was in the movie, and that is I remember him from being the president in that television series 24.
Okay.
And so he stood up, and I was like, I was glad the camera wasn't on, because I was like, hey, that's the guy from 24. And so that day, like in that church, there was so many, like everybody who was a celebrity was in that scene on that day. And so that was a really fun day. Yeah.
It's hard too, because when you're in a film, sometimes they're very secretive about what's going on. You mentioned that you don't always get the full script because maybe it's not done, but I remember the filming of Nomis being talked about, and I remember it was all over the news that Henry Cavill was in town, but you didn't hear a single thing about Ben Kingsley. Do you think that was a paparazzi deke, or do you think it was a secrecy thing?
Maybe. I don't know, but I also think because of Superman, right? And Superman sells newspapers. Yeah, I don't know. That is strange. Yeah.
It's crazy because not to say that he's a higher level actor, but he's been around much longer. So you'd think that would be where all the buzz is, but I don't. Maybe it's just to keep things on the down low. I don't know.
Maybe. Who knows? Yeah.
Now, we can see you in Breakthrough next month.
That's right.
Then we can see you in Nomis. I believe it comes out in July.
Yeah. Is that when it comes out?
I believe so.
Yeah, okay, good.
And then what's next for you? What are you working on?
Next, I'm doing a show at the Royal Manitoba Theatre Centre called The Cottage, and then after that, I'm doing a show at Rainbow Stage called Strike, which is sort of going hand in hand with the movie that I'm not in, but it's going to be released, and it's actually the movie version's called Stand, the musical, and it's because here in Winnipeg it is the 100th anniversary of the Winnipeg General Strike, and so I'm playing a character named Mike in that, and so that's what's happening. And then I'm doing a show that I'm writing for the Winnipeg Fringe Festival. It's called Mixtapes from My Mom. And it's about my mom, who has now passed, and she left behind. Do you remember audio cassettes and making mixtapes? Yeah. So she left behind a bin of 257 mixtapes, and I'm going through them, and I'm going to pick some that really resonate with me, and I'm going to tell a story about a particular day that was very amazing but also very difficult. And it's going to be me telling a story, and I'm going to be backed by a full band. And so that's and then after that, I'm going to celebrate my 10th wedding anniversary and have a bit of a summer. And then, such is the actor's life. Who knows what's going to happen after that? You love it? I'm glad
it keeps you on the edge of your seat. You
Yeah.
have stuff to look forward to, and then you have the wonderment of what's next.
Yeah, it's not great for the hair coloring. It's sort of it's stressful sometimes, especially when you have a family and you're trying to keep moving forward. It is. But you're right. There is a certain. I've noticed in myself that because theater will never well, not never, but rarely does it go longer than 6 weeks. And so I've noticed that after 6 weeks, if I'm ever doing something for more than 6 weeks, I do get a little antsy, because that's just how now it's in my clock. That's how it works. And so, trust me, I've tried to sort of settle into the sort of 9 to 5 sort of thing, and it's just not for me.
I have one more question that I try to ask each of my guests. I can see your socks. Is there a reason you chose? Oh, I like that one.
Yeah.
Do they match?
No, they don't.
Perfect. I like it. Is that an all the time thing that they mismatch?
They, I have so many socks that my wife, okay, before I say this, we have an arrangement. I do the dishes. She does the laundry, okay? My wife sort of gives up and puts them all into one bin. So when the ones that match, when I've run out of those, I turn to the bin and I just grab.
Thank you so much, Cory. I really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you for having me here.